The Cosby Show, 1984 cast in 2026. Their changes will stun you. The Cosby Show didn't just entertain America in 1984, it raised America. For millions, the Huxtables were the picture of love success and black excellence, until real life exposed the cracks no sitcom could hide. By 2026, some cast members are gone, some lives were shattered, and one legacy collapsed so violently, it changed TV history forever. Stay with legends of black excellence until the end, because the transformations you're about to see are shocking, heartbreaking, and unforgettable.
When I see my kids growing
and
up,
as you
their
watch,
child.
ask yourself, was it all real or just the perfect illusion? Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby didn't just play Cliff Huxtable, he became a national symbol. When The Cosby Show premiered in 1984, Cosby was already a superstar, but the role of America's most comforting TV father elevated him into something rarer, a cultural authority. Cliff was warm, disciplined, and wise, the kind of man viewers trusted with their living rooms and their children's values. The show reshaped primetime television, proving a black family could be portrayed as educated, loving, and successful without stereotypes. For millions, Cosby wasn't simply an actor. He was a reassuring voice in an era hungry for stability, a man who seemed untouchable. Behind that carefully built image was a different story, waiting in the dark. For years, rumors and accusations existed quietly at the edges of Hollywood, rarely breaking through the wall of power around him. But everything changed in 2014 when old allegations resurfaced with new force and the public began listening in a way it never had before. One accusation became 2, then 10, then dozens. Women described patterns of abuse hidden behind fame, influence, and silence. What made the fall so devastating wasn't only the accusations themselves, it was the contrast. The same man who delivered moral lessons on television was now being accused of acts that shattered the trust he once represented. Then came the moment history officially turned on him. In 2018, Bill Cosby was convicted of aggravated indecent assault, a legal outcome that stunned a nation raised on Huxtable warmth. The sentence, 3 to 10 years in prison, didn't just remove a celebrity from society. It symbolically tore down an era of entertainment that protected powerful men at all costs. Statues, honors, and public celebrations were stripped away. Networks pulled reruns. Institutions that once embraced him began cutting ties. How do you separate the comfort you grew up with from the truth you can't ignore? That question haunted longtime viewers, especially older audiences who had once seen him as a father figure from across the screen. Cosby's release in 2021 after his conviction was overturned on procedural grounds created another wave of complicated reactions. Legally, he was free, but the ruling was not an exoneration. It did not declare him innocent. Instead, it highlighted how courtroom procedures can reshape outcomes even when public perception remains permanently altered. By that point, the damage was irreversible. The America's Dad title had been shattered beyond repair, replaced by a legacy defined by accusations, trial headlines, and the wider conversation about how long victims are forced to wait before they're believed. By 2026, The Cosby Story stands as the most stunning transformation connected to The Cosby Show. Not because it's dramatic, but because it is final. His career, once built on trust and moral certainty, exists now as a cautionary tale about celebrity worship, unchecked power, and silence protected by success. The show still holds a place in TV history, but its brightest star became its darkest shadow. And for the generation that watched Cliff Huxtable guide his family with calm wisdom, the real-life outcome leaves a haunting lesson sometimes. The greatest changes aren't wrinkles or age. They are the moment the world realizes the story it believed was never the full truth. Phylicia Rashad. Phylicia Rashad walked into The Cosby Show in 1984 and instantly changed what America expected from a TV mother. As Claire Huxtable, she wasn't just the supportive wife beside Cliff, she was a force of intellect and elegance all on her own. Claire was a lawyer, a commanding presence, and a woman who could discipline her children with a look and still fill the room with warmth a second later. For many viewers, especially those who grew up in that era, Claire Huxtable became the gold standard, a portrait of black womanhood on prime-time television that felt powerful, polished, and deeply human. Rashad didn't play Claire like a stereotype, she played her like a leader, and that confidence made audiences believe the Huxtables weren't just a TV family, they were a model. When the series ended, Rashad refused to live only inside nostalgia. While many sitcom stars struggled to break free from their signature role, she made a deliberate pivot back to the world that demands real craft, the stage. Over the years, she built a respected theater career that proved her range extended far beyond a living room set. The defining milestone came in 2004, when she won the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play for a Raisin in the Sun, becoming the first black woman to win that category. That moment wasn't just a trophy, it was validation. Rashad was no longer Claire Huxtable from TV. She was a serious artist with legacy-level credibility, admired by younger actors and honored by older audiences who recognized discipline when they saw it. But history has a way of pulling even the most respected names into the center of a storm. As Bill Cosby's legal battles and public accusations intensified, The Cosby Show stopped being just a beloved memory, it became a complicated cultural symbol. And when Rashad publicly defended her former co-star, the response was swift. What she framed as loyalty and personal belief was interpreted by many as turning away from alleged victims. The backlash wasn't subtle. Critics questioned her judgment, institutions felt pressured to respond, and the public conversation shifted from her performances to her stance. In a matter of days, an actress once viewed as nearly untouchable found herself at the center of a national argument about morality, accountability, and what people owe the public when serious allegations are involved. That is what makes her story so startling in 2026. Her talent was never the question, her image became the battleground. Rashad's career did not collapse, but the way people discuss her changed permanently. For some, she remains the ultimate symbol of class and excellence. For others, her defense of Cosby stains the legacy they once celebrated without hesitation. She became a reminder that fame isn't just about what you've done. It's about how you're judged when the world demands a side. And once the internet decides you represent something bigger than yourself, there's almost no way to return to being just an actress. By 2026, Phylicia Rashad still stands as one of the most influential women to ever appear on American television. Her work on stage, her awards, and her impact on generations of performers remain undeniable. But her journey also reflects a harsher truth: icons don't get to live in one chapter forever. The same woman who helped redefine black family representation on TV now carries a legacy that is both admired and debated. And in the long shadow of The Cosby Show, her transformation isn't about aging, fame, or career moves. It's about how quickly public love can turn into public judgment, even for someone who once felt like America's definition of grace. Malcolm Jamal Warner. Malcolm Jamal Warner didn't just play Theo Huxtable, he grew up in America's living room. When The Cosby Show premiered in 1984, he was only 14 years old, stepping into the role of the awkward, funny, and deeply relatable Huxtable son. Theo wasn't written as a perfect kid, and that's exactly why audiences loved him. He struggled with school, stumbled through confidence, and constantly tried to prove he belonged in a family that felt almost too ideal. Over time, Theo became the emotional anchor for young viewers who didn't see themselves in genius characters or spotless success stories. He made the Huxtables feel real because his imperfections felt real. As the series went on, Warner's performance gained depth in a way most teen sitcom roles never do. Theo's storylines touched on pressure, identity, responsibility, and even learning challenges, themes that resonated with families raising children in the real world. He wasn't a punchline. He was the son many parents recognized, and the boy many kids understood. By the time the show ended, Malcolm Jamal Warner had become inseparable from Theo's legacy. For a generation, his face was frozen in the era of bright sweaters and warm family lessons replayed endlessly in reruns. The fame was steady, but it carried a quiet weight, the challenge of being remembered more for who you were at 17 than who you became at 30, 40, or 50. Unlike many child stars, Warner didn't burn out or self-destruct in public. He chose something rarer: consistency. In adulthood, he worked across television, directing, voice acting, and music, never chasing chaos to stay relevant. He wasn't tabloid-driven. He wasn't obsessed with shock value. He built a reputation for being grounded, the kind of actor who kept showing up even if the spotlight wasn't screaming his name. That long, steady career made him feel like one of the few Cosby Show alumni who escaped tragedy. In a cast connected to controversy, scandals, and sudden losses, Warner seemed like the one who would simply keep going. That's what made what happened next so devastating. In the transcript, Warner's story takes a sudden, heartbreaking turn. It states that on July 20th, 2025, Malcolm Jamal Warner died at the age of 54 while surfing with a group. The shock wasn't only the death itself, it was the timing. To fans, he still felt young in the way people do when you watched them grow up on screen. People assumed time was on his side. Theo Huxtable had survived awkward teenage years, adulthood, and decades of Hollywood changes, so his real-life ending felt brutally unfair. It was the kind of news that hits older audiences especially hard because it doesn't feel like losing a celebrity. It feels like losing a piece of your own past. By 2026, Malcolm Jamal Warner's transformation is not about a dramatic comeback or scandal. It's about the painful reality that some legacies end quietly and suddenly. Theo Huxtable remains a symbol of black boyhood on TV that was allowed to be human, not perfect, not ruined, just real. Warner carried that role with dignity for decades, and his death, as described in the transcript, turned nostalgia into grief. For longtime viewers, his story is one of the most stunning changes in the entire Cosby Show timeline, because it reminds us that behind every familiar face in reruns is a real life still moving forward. Until one day, without warning, it stops. Keshia Knight Pulliam. Keshia Knight Pulliam became famous before she was old enough to fully understand what fame even was. When The Cosby Show premiered in 1984, she was just 5 years old, stepping into the role of Rudy Huxtable, the youngest child in America's favorite television family. Rudy wasn't simply cute, she was quick, funny, and emotionally sharp in a way that made her feel like the heart of the Huxtable household. For millions of viewers, especially older audiences who watched the series in real time, Rudy became a symbol of innocence and warmth. She grew up on screen in front of the entire country, and for years people remembered her as television's forever little sister. But childhood stardom can be a trap, and Pulliam seemed determined not to fall into it. When the cameras stopped rolling, she didn't chase attention to stay relevant. Instead, she made a rare choice for a former child star. She stepped away from the spotlight long enough to reclaim control of her identity. While the public still saw her as Rudy, she focused on building a life that didn't depend on nostalgia. That path included education, personal growth, and a slower, more deliberate approach to adulthood. Rather than turning her past into a circus, she treated it like a foundation, something to respect, but not something that would dictate her entire future. As she matured, Pulliam returned to acting in a way that felt intentional, not desperate. She didn't try to outshine her childhood image with scandals or reinvention stunts. She chose selective roles, explored producing, and moved with the kind of caution that many former child stars never learn in time. To longtime Cosby Show fans, she represented a small victory, a child actor who made it out without self-destruction. It wasn't the loudest comeback, but it was steady, and it reflected a woman determined to be known for more than a character people still quote decades later. Then in the mid-2010s, her private life became public in the way celebrities fear most. Pulliam's marriage to Ed Hartwell. A former NFL player collapsed into a highly visible and emotionally charged divorce. The situation turned messy fast, with accusations, legal filings, intense media coverage, and social media commentary that treated real pain like entertainment. The dispute grew especially tense because it involved deeply personal claims and questions of trust. The image of Rudy Huxtable's sweet, protected, and untouchable suddenly collided with the reality of an adult woman fighting through humiliation, judgment, and conflict under the glare of public opinion. By 2026, Kashia Knight Pulliam's story stands out as one of the most surprising transformations from the Cosby Show era. Her change isn't about losing her career or disappearing. It's about surviving the kind of chaos that rewrites a person's public identity overnight. She went from being America's child sweetheart to a woman forced to defend herself in front of strangers who felt entitled to take sides. Yet the most powerful part of her journey is that she didn't let that storm define her forever. In the years after the headlines, she leaned into a quieter, self-directed life, balancing motherhood, selective entertainment work, and the determination to stay in control of her narrative. For fans who remember Rudy as a little girl with a big heart, her 2026 Then and Now story is a reminder that growing up on television doesn't protect you from real life. It just means the world watches when it gets hard. Lisa Bonet. Lisa Bonet entered the Cosby Show like a spark that never wanted to be contained. When the series premiered in 1984, she was only 17 years old, cast as Denise Huxtable, the curious, unpredictable daughter who didn't fit neatly into the show's polished family portrait. Denise wasn't the perfect child sitcoms usually relied on. She was moody, creative, impulsive, and emotionally restless, the kind of teenager who could be funny one moment and distant the next. That realism made her magnetic. For many viewers, Denise felt like the Huxtable who breathed the most freedom into the house, and Bonet's natural charisma turned her into a style icon almost overnight. But that same freedom became a problem behind the scenes. As the show grew into a cultural institution, its image was carefully protected, and control became everything. According to the transcript's narrative, Bonet's independence clashed with the stricter moral vision shaping the series. She was perceived as hard to manage, and once she became pregnant and refused to let her personal life be controlled by the machine around her, the consequences came fast. Rather than being supported, she was pushed out of the main story. Denise was redirected into a spin-off, and soon after, Bonet was effectively written away. In an era that punished young women for autonomy, her exit wasn't framed as empowerment, it was framed as a warning. That career disruption had a lasting ripple effect. Hollywood can be unforgiving, especially when an actress is labeled difficult, whether fairly or not. The opportunities Bonet might have had leading roles consistent, studio backing, the kind of long-term television security other cast members enjoyed never fully materialized. Even when she returned briefly, the momentum had already been damaged. The public still loved Denise, but the industry didn't treat Bonet like the next big star. It treated her like a risk. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, she wasn't soaring, she was surviving, doing work in scattered bursts, while the role that made her famous stayed frozen in reruns. And yet, something else happened that few actresses ever achieve. Lisa Bonet became more than a performer. She became a symbol. Her fashion, her beauty, her calm defiance, and her refusal to conform turned her into a cultural blueprint for individuality. Even when her acting career wasn't consistently front and center, her presence remained powerful. Her personal life added to that mythology, especially her high-profile relationship and marriage to Lenny Kravitz, which kept her in the spotlight even when her screen roles were limited. Years later, her relationship and marriage to Jason Momoa renewed global attention, introducing her to new generations who didn't grow up watching Denise Huxtable every week. By 2026, Lisa Bonet's Then and Now story feels haunting because it shows what Hollywood often does to women who won't be molded. Denise Huxtable lives on as an icon of youthful freedom. But the woman behind that character paid a price for being herself too loudly in an industry built on obedience. Her legacy isn't a straight line of awards and blockbuster roles. It's a portrait of influence without stability, fame without protection, and identity that outlasted opportunity. In a cast filled with scandals, tragedies, and reinventions, Bonet's transformation is one of the most striking. She didn't collapse, she endured. And in doing so, she became proof that sometimes the most unforgettable stars aren't the ones Hollywood rewards. They're the ones it tries to silence. Jeffrey Owens. Jeffrey Owens may not have been the loudest face on The Cosby Show, but he became one of its most quietly memorable. As Elvin Thibodeau, the kind, slightly awkward son-in-law, he added heart to the Huxtable family world. During the show's peak, that steady role gave him the stability many actors chase their whole career's regular work, national recognition, and the comfort of being part of a series that shaped American television. To longtime viewers, Elvin represented decency, patience, and everyday warmth, the kind of man you could trust around the people you love. But once the show ended, Owens faced the truth behind Hollywood glamour. Being famous doesn't guarantee a secure future. Like many sitcom actors after a major hit, he found that opportunities didn't stay constant. Roles became harder to land. Money wasn't as consistent, and the industry shifted toward new trends and new names. Owens didn't crash publicly or disappear into scandal. His struggle was quieter and more common than people realize. He simply experienced what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the world moves on while real bills and responsibilities remain. That reality became a national conversation in 2018 when Owens was photographed working at a Trader Joe's grocery store, and the image went viral. The internet reacted with shock, pity, and judgment, as if honest work was something embarrassing. But Owens refused to treat it like a scandal. He explained that acting work is unpredictable, and that working a normal job is not shameful, it's survival. In that moment, the public was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Many people admire celebrities, but they don't respect them when they become regular again. Owens, without raising his voice, turned the situation into a lesson about humility and dignity. By 2026, Jeffrey Owens stands as one of the most surprising then and now stories connected to The Cosby Show. Not because he became tabloid famous or had a dramatic downfall, but because he showed a different kind of strength. After the viral moment, support poured in from fellow actors and fans, and new opportunities followed. Owens returned to acting more steadily, proving that a person's worth isn't measured by fame, but by how they carry themselves when fame fades. In a cast filled with controversy and tragedy, his story is a reminder that resilience can be louder than scandal, and that real dignity often shows up when no one is applauding. Earl Hyman. Earl Hyman didn't appear on The Cosby Show for long, but when he did, he brought a gravity that couldn't be ignored. Playing Russell Huxtable Clare's stern and principled father, Hyman represented the older generation, disciplined, demanding, and not easily impressed. His presence reminded viewers that even inside America's most idealized TV family, love could still come with pressure and expectations. He wasn't a loud character, but he carried authority in every line, the kind of performance that made a short role feel unforgettable. What made Hyman stand out wasn't fame, it was craft. Long before he ever stepped into the Huxtable living room, he was a respected stage actor with deep training and decades of experience. He belonged to a tradition of performers who built their reputations through discipline rather than celebrity. To audiences who grew up appreciating theater and serious acting, Hyman's career was the definition of longevity. He wasn't chasing trends. He was the trend, a steady, respected professional whose talent came from work, not hype. The transcript also highlights a detail that connected him to a completely different generation of fans: his voice work. Hyman was known as the voice of Panthro in Thundercats, giving life to one of the most beloved animated characters of the era. For many viewers, that revelation is part of what makes his then and now story so surprising. The same man who played a serious traditional father figure on a groundbreaking sitcom also helped shape childhood memories through animation. It's a reminder that many great performers have careers that stretch across worlds, even when the public only remembers one role. By 2017, Earl Hyman's long journey came to a quiet end. He passed away at the age of 91, closing the chapter on a life that represented dignity, talent, and endurance. In the context of The Cosby Show, 1984 cast in 2026, his story isn't defined by scandal or shock headlines. It's defined by the passing of a true veteran. His legacy feels like a tribute to a generation of black actors who fought for space in the industry through mastery, not shortcuts. And even though Russell Huxtable was only a small part of his career, Hyman's performance remains one of those rare moments where a supporting character leaves a permanent imprint. In 2026, revisiting Earl Hyman's story hits differently. It's not about how much he changed physically, it's about how much he accomplished quietly. He showed that real greatness doesn't always come from being the star of the show. Sometimes it comes from being the actor who steps in, briefly steals the scene with pure presence, and leaves behind a legacy that still echoes decades later. Tempest Bledsoe. Tempest Bledsoe stepped into The Cosby Show in 1984 as Vanessa Huxtable, the middle daughter caught between childhood and adulthood. She was old enough to question rules, but still young enough to crave approval, and that in-between energy made Vanessa feel real to families watching at home. Unlike characters built for big laughs or dramatic spotlight, Vanessa was often the steady rhythm of the Huxtable household, familiar, grounded, and quietly essential. For many longtime viewers, she represented the child who wasn't the baby anymore but wasn't the grown one either. The daughter most parents recognized instantly. As the series ran through the late 1980s and early 1990s, Bledsoe grew up on camera in real time. Vanessa's storylines reflected the everyday tensions of parenting, testing boundaries, pushing back, learning consequences, and trying to find identity in a world full of expectations. She wasn't positioned as the breakout star, but her presence never felt disposable. She carried the kind of role that doesn't always win headlines, yet holds the family narrative together. In many ways, that made her performance even more believable. She wasn't a cartoon or a punchline. She was a real teenager in a real feeling home, and that realism is why people still remember her. When The Cosby Show ended, Bledsoe's path took a different kind of turn. Not a crash, not a scandal, but a slow fading that can be just as painful. Opportunities didn't disappear overnight. They simply thinned out. She appeared here and there in television projects, but nothing consistently big enough to redefine her beyond Vanessa Huxtable. The industry moved forward, and nostalgia locked her image in the past, replaying the same youthful version of her over and over. For many actors, the hardest part isn't losing fame, it's being remembered for only one era, while your present self struggles to be seen. That's what makes Tempest Bledsoe's then and now story stand out by 2026. She didn't become a tabloid headline, she didn't self-destruct, she didn't fall into a public tragedy. Instead, she experienced the quieter reality that hits many television actors. The world applauds you loudly, then forgets you softly. Vanessa Huxtable remains endlessly replayed as part of one of the most iconic sitcoms ever made, while the actress behind her spent years navigating an industry that offers fewer doors once your moment passes. By 2026, her change is stunning precisely because it's so human. In a cast filled with controversy, scandal, and loss, Tempest Bledsoe represents the overlooked struggle of simply being left behind. Her legacy isn't built on chaos, it's built on consistency. She delivered a believable daughter, helped shape a cultural classic, and then watched the spotlight shift elsewhere. And for audiences who grew up with the Huxtables, her story is a reminder that sometimes the saddest Hollywood endings aren't dramatic at all. They're quiet, gradual, and hidden behind the comfort of reruns. Merlin Santana. Merlin Santana's appearance on The Cosby Show may have been small, but his presence was impossible to miss. As Stanley, he carried the kind of natural charm that makes casting directors take notice even when the screen time is limited. He had a smooth confidence, an easy smile, and a calm energy that hinted at a bigger future waiting just beyond that early role. For many fans of 90s television, Santana represented a rare kind of young talent, someone who looked like he could grow up in the industry without losing himself. He wasn't a gimmick. He felt like the real thing. As he moved into the 1990s, that promise started becoming reality. Santana gained wider recognition through The Steve Harvey Show, where his timing and likability turned him into a fan favorite. He was young, visible, and steadily working something that's never guaranteed in Hollywood. Even better, he seemed to be transitioning smoothly from child roles into adult work, avoiding the common traps that destroy so many young careers. The trajectory looked stable. To audiences watching him evolve, it felt like he was building a long road ahead, more sitcoms, maybe films, maybe even a leading man era as he got older. He had momentum, and momentum in entertainment is priceless. But his story ended in one of the most brutal ways possible, sudden, violent, and fueled by deception. On November 9, 2002, Merlin Santana was shot and killed in Los Angeles, dying at only 26 years old. The shock didn't come only from the loss, but from the reason behind it. His death was linked to a false accusation that triggered a chain of decisions no one could undo. According to the case, Monique King falsely claimed Santana had sexually harassed her, and the accusation was used as fuel for retaliation. In a horrifying twist, Damian Andre Gates, just 19 years old, carried out the shooting. What should have been a misunderstanding or an accusation investigated through proper channels became something deadly, and Santana paid the ultimate price. The legal aftermath exposed how cold and calculated the situation had become. Gates was convicted of first-degree murder, while King was found guilty of conspiracy and second-degree murder. The courtroom details were painful, but the larger tragedy was simpler. An entire life was taken because a lie became a weapon. Santana wasn't lost to illness, accident, or addiction. He was stolen from the world by manipulation, anger, and recklessness. For fans, it felt especially cruel because he was exactly the kind of young actor people were rooting for, talented, rising, and finally finding his place. By 2026, Merlin Santana's then and now story remains one of the darkest turning points connected to that era of television. His career didn't fade, it was cut off mid-sentence, and that's what makes the change so stunning. He went from being a symbol of youthful promise to a reminder of how fragile success really is. When people revisit the Cosby Show cast journeys today, Santana's story stands like a warning sign in the middle of nostalgia. The laughter is still there in reruns, but the reality behind the scenes is harder. Sometimes the brightest futures don't end slowly. They end in one sudden moment that a courtroom can explain, but nothing can truly repair. The Cosby Show once felt like America's safest place, a living room full of laughter, love, and black excellence. But by 2026, the cast's real lives prove how quickly a perfect legacy can fracture into controversy, tragedy, and unanswered pain. Some endured the spotlight with dignity, others were pulled into storms they never escaped, and a few were taken far too soon. So, here's the real question for Legends of Black Excellence viewers. Can a timeless masterpiece survive when its biggest icon becomes its darkest shadow? Tell me your honest take in the comments.